Most days after school, I take my dog on a walk around my neighborhood. I usually take the same or a similar route, sometimes going to the local dog park. Today, however, I decided to take a new route. Near my house, there's a trail leading into a canyon. One day, my friend and I found this trail as we were walking around my neighborhood. We found it semi-hidden and mostly unused at the end of an old cul-de-sac. As we walked along the trail, we discovered a big open space surrounded by wildflowers, shrubs, and some wildlife. It had a beautiful view of the sunset. Now, it's still a quiet place that not many people know about, so I go down there whenever I'm overwhelmed or in need of a connection with nature. Going down that trail today with my dog, I was able to experience tranquility in its purest form. It was just like Thoreau said in The Pond and Water. Heaven is under our feet as well as above our heads. The silence allowed me to think clearly and pay attention to my senses, listening to birds chirping and smelling flowers along the path. As much as I love this place, however, I always have to be on high alert. As a woman, it can be a bit scary sometimes. Because it is a secluded place, every time I go, I have to bring a friend or my dog. It's interesting to compare that concept to the experience of Thoreau. He didn't have many fears going into the wilderness alone. This is shown throughout Walden, especially in Solitude, when he writes, "I go and come with strange liberty in nature, a part of herself." He didn't feel afraid because he knew that he was a part of nature, whereas with most women, we have to be fully attentive to our surroundings for the sake of our safety. Of course, Thoreau must have been a bit cautious in his endeavors, but it was also a much different time back then. He would have only needed to be aware of the dangers of nature, whereas today there's much more to be afraid of in society. It's difficult to enjoy going places if I'm in a situation where I don't have proper means of protection. Nevertheless, this trail is still one of my favorite places to go when I need to calm down. Personally, I feel like I relate a lot to the ideas presented by Ralph Waldo Emerson. In Self-Reliance, he discusses the importance of thinking for oneself. He says, "It is easy to live in the world. It is easy in the world to live after the world's opinion. It is easy in solitude to live after our own. But the great man is he who in the midst of the crowd keeps with perfect sweetness the independence of solitude." I think I'm a nonconformist in the way that in most social situations, I don't care about what others think of me. I think as an adolescent and a teenager, or a high schooler especially, it's rare to find someone who is completely sure of themselves and doesn't base their actions off of other people. Of course, I'm still finding myself. I do conform to society in the way that I dress, the way I talk, etc. And I have no idea what I'm going to be when I grow up. I still make plenty of mistakes. But I think what sets me apart is that I'm comfortable in the idea that everything is temporary. Life changes every day, and there are really no constants. I love myself and am happy with who I am right now, and that's all that really matters. I've seen many people, my past self included, tear themselves down over things that aren't important in the long run. I really just have a good understanding of what I want my life to be like. I want to prioritize myself, and as Ralph Waldo Emerson puts it, trust thyself. Every heart vibrates to that iron string. Accept the place the divine providence has found for you, the society of your contemporaries, the connection of events. This task was a lot more difficult than I thought it would be. I went into this thinking that if I just set aside my phone for a few hours, then I would have achieved my goal. It started off pretty easy, but I quickly realized that technology is everywhere, and it would be a lot harder to avoid than just having less screen time. When I woke up in the morning, my first instinct was to check my phone. After avoiding that urge, I went into the kitchen to make breakfast. However, I'm not much of a cook, so without even realizing it, I started to use the microwave to make myself an instant meal from Trader Joe's and hot chocolate. Looking back, it seems a little concerning that that's what I was having for breakfast, and maybe that in itself is a consequence of laziness in modern life. After this moment, I felt a deeper understanding of just how dependent humanity is on technology. We use it to the point that we don't even recognize how lucky we are and how easy life is compared to how people used to live. While I was making breakfast, I had to actively avoid technology. My sister was watching TV in the living room, my dad was scrolling through Instagram, and there were digital clocks all around me. It felt as though I was being bombarded by these machines, forcing me to engage with them, when all I wanted was to live a simple life for less than a day. After eating, I went back to my bedroom to decide how I was going to pass the time. With the way that Thoreau described it, living a simpler life never seemed boring. He always had something to do, even if it wasn't a typical task like hunting for food or fixing his shack. He was constantly learning. Every day he spent in nature, he became more and more enlightened, seeing the season change and the animals acclimate. In fact, he even says in his story Walden, "Time is but the stream I go a-fishing in. I drink at it, but while I drink, I see the sandy bottom and detect how shallow it is." For him, life is not about achieving or gaining anything. Instead, he is just living in the present, content with himself and the knowledge that he is experiencing his existence to the fullest. With my experience, at first I forgot the point of the assignment. I already had all of my necessities done, so I tried to think of ways to pass the time. It was only later that I realized this was never about completing the task, but instead to experience true living. So for a few minutes, I just sat in my room and thought about what to do. I could have asked one of my friends to hang out, but I wouldn't have had a phone to text them with. And my parents had just had our landline canceled a few months ago. Even if I could contact them, though, they still might have spent some time on their phone or tempted me into doing the same. The thought of working on homework also crossed my mind, but unfortunately in this day and age, most of the assignments are online or require the internet to do research. Finally, after a few minutes, I decided to play guitar. At first, this seemed like an activity that I could do without a screen, but even for that, I realized that I usually look up music tabs rather than looking at sheet music, so I played from memory, and to my satisfaction, it was extremely refreshing. Sitting on my floor listening to the strings, I felt peaceful and content. Tranquil moments like these are crucial to my happiness, and having that escape was really something that I needed. Especially in junior year, the stress levels are high. Sometimes I just need to disconnect from reality and be happy. After playing guitar, I decided to spend some more time with myself and do a face mask. Usually when doing something like that, I would put on a movie or a show in the background to pass the time. But for this, I chose to paint my nails instead. At this point, a few hours had passed. I had finished my face mask, cleaned my room, and taken my dog for a walk. My mind was clear, and so before ending my experience, I made a list of all the things I wanted to accomplish that day. The list included doing my homework, finishing the book I had been reading, and later heading over to my friend's house for her Super Bowl party. I became surprisingly productive during this time despite not being able to reach the internet. All in all, this project has enlightened me in the way that I now realize how much technology influences our lives and how we as a society need to greater appreciate life beyond a screen.